and welcome to Women of the Middle East podcast. This podcast relates the realities of Arab women and their rich and diverse experiences. It aims to present the multiplicity of women's voices, and it wishes to break cultural stereotypes about women of the Middle East, as well as educate and empower the younger generation of Middle Eastern women who were stripped of their historical reference and weren't necessarily raised to believe in their agency and power to create their own destiny. I'm Amal Malki. I'm a feminist, scholar, and educator. I'm also the author of Arab Women in Arab News, Old Stereotypes and New Media. I created this podcast to be an extension and an update of the book and its main topics. Hello, and hope you're all well. Thanks to all who emailed and contacted me via social media. Your sincere wishes and prayers have certainly reached me. I'm grateful, and I'm happy to say that I fully recovered from COVID-19. Corona or no corona, do stay in touch. For episode 5, I've chosen to speak to you about role models in the Arab world and the MENA region, and the importance of role modeling as well within our societies in changing gender roles. I've also recorded a very interesting interview with Al Jazeera TV producer and presenter Rawa Ojay, whom I'm sure you will enjoy listening to. I'll end the episode by playing a song that was produced by Al Jazeera Network as well for the celebration of International Women's Day. Let me start by saying women can more easily enter a culture of achievement when from their youngest memories as girls, such a culture is already visible for them to enter. There seems to be two kinds of such role models, which we shall call individualized and strategic role models. Individualized role models are women who may inspire girls without providing models that are easy for others to emulate. Their achievement may be leveraged through wealth, social position, inheritance, or lucky circumstances that ordinary girls cannot reproduce. Strategic role models are women of achievement whose success is reproducible through instruction and training. Strategic role models make the roots of their success visible and reproducible for the next generation of women. The Arab Human Development Report of 2005 on the rise of Arab women put some stock in the individualized role models. As Al-Hamid writes in the foreword, the achievements of individual Arab women must be, and I quote, must be the starting point for Arab development efforts, unquote. While the report pays homage to the traditional role women have played in family and social structures, it seeks to balance that role against newly emerging non-traditional roles of women achievers across the spectrum of professions and institutions of civil society and in political and emancipatory movements. The report goes on to discuss the cultural barriers cited in previous reports that must be lifted for Arab women to achieve their full potential. The impetus for lifting these barriers comes from the understanding of Arab women's achievements, potential, and the huge cost to society, as well as to each woman personally when they are not allowed to live up to it. The report then goes on to profile the achievements of individual Arab women in literature, arts, cinema, the social and natural sciences, athletics, and entrepreneurship. The 2005 report recognizes that female empowerment programs that are too individualized have certain limitations. Role models cut too close to the lives of specific individuals may turn into tokens, idols, and celebrities rather than true role models. The danger of role models that are too individualized is that they may encourage tokenism practices, bringing cosmetic solutions to long-standing and deeply rooted societal problems. Strategic role models, by contrast, inspire study, emulation, and admiration, but not celebrity worship or adulation. The 2005 report addresses the limits of role models for Arab women that have become too individualized. It asserts that reducing the gender empowerment deficit in the Arab world calls for more than a symbolic makeover that lets a few Arab women advance at the expense of the many. The report advocates strategic thinking about Arab women's empowerment at the societal level, by which it means finding ways for Arab women to attain a critical mass and positions of leadership and power. But what might such a strategy be? The report divides its answers to this question into two parts. The first part is to ensure the short-term legal enforcement of Arab women's rights so that all barriers to developing their capacities and capabilities to their fullest potential are removed. To this end, the report calls for the protection of women's rights in the home and beyond, and the guarantee of legal and institutional changes and compliance with the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. It further calls for affirmative action practices in the hiring of Arab women, at least until women reach a critical mass that would make such policy unnecessary. The second part, even more ambitious, calls for radical long-term shift in societal thinking that would ensure that Arab women, competitively educated and trained, would be accorded fair access to leadership positions systematically as an unexceptional cultural group rather than a one token at a time cultural exception. Planning for such a seismic shift calls for a new ideology about women in Arab societies and new social movements to help spread it. These new social movements would depend, according to the report, on networks of women and men working at the national and transnational level across the Middle East and North Africa. Individual female models can certainly fit into this strategic planning, but in order to do so, their personal example must be accompanied by strategic thinking. In contrast to individualized female role models which present Arab women of achievements to younger Arab women without strategies for reproducing their success, strategic female role models seek to unify personal examples with the replication strategies required to build critical mass. In this segment, I'll be talking to Rawaa Augé. Rawaa is a presenter and producer of Women's Voices or bekasretta at Jazeera Arabic Channel. Rawaa joined Al Jazeera as a news presenter in 2014, covering a series of reports from the Central African Republic, Bosnia, and Lebanon. She covers numerous events for Al Jazeera, including coverage of the United Nations General Assembly meetings. Rawaa has also conducted a number of high-profile interviews for the channel, including the interview with Nobel Prize winner Nadia Murad during the Doha Forum of 2018. Rawaa spoke to me about how it is like to be a woman. She delved into memories of childhood and early adulthood that has shaped her. She touched upon many topics that any woman anywhere in the world can relate to. She speaks about her personal experience with postpartum depression and sexual harassment. She also speaks about Western stereotypes of Arab women as an Arab who lived in Paris for some time. She talks about her program on Al Jazeera network, bekasretta, or as translated into English, Women's Voices. She speaks about the strength and support needed to produce and present such a program that is focused on women's issues. Rawaa is a strong and brave woman. I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to her as much as I enjoyed talking to her. Rawaa, it's lovely to have you on Women of the Middle East podcast. I bet this will be a very special segment and a very special episode because it's not one that would focus on one experience. Definitely, we will be talking about your personal experience, but also about multiple experiences that you have been in contact with on different levels. But to begin with, I'd like to maybe frame it as we will be talking more about the intersections that that has been playing a huge role in your life, the personal and the professional. And I am interested in both the personal and the professional. The personal is the political, right? So could you tell us a bit about yourself as a woman, as a mother, and as a professional as well?
Well, if we want to put it in the perspective of a woman, I have to start by I am a daughter. I actually recently discovered that my whole childhood and my experience with my mother is actually what shaped me into being this woman today. I am the daughter of a mother who had severe postpartum depression, and as a child, and in the 80s, no one really understood what it was. So it was really severe, and just people around us were telling us that we should just try avoid pissing her off. We should try to protect her, and that no, we cannot go to a psychiatrist, not ask for help, because what will other people or about her, or about my father, or that she's gone crazy. And so my entire life I was the eldest, so I was in charge of my sister and my brother, because my mom was someone who was not able to be there. At the same time, I don't hold any grudges against her. On the contrary, on the very short times when she was able to be mentally present with us, she taught us how to be strong, and she taught us that it's very important to be true to ourselves and not to think about anyone else. And this is when I start thinking, who are these people who will be talking about us? And I think this is when I really became someone independent and strong and free, because I realized that these people, even if they talk, what do they bring into my personal life? Like, why would these people bother calling my mom crazy or unfit mom if we say that she's not being able to care for us, whereas they don't do anything to provide this care? I mean, why there's no such positive intervention from society? On the contrary, they like to be judgmental, but they don't offer help. And I think this is what shaped my entire life. It's not to be, I always tell myself that I don't judge people, because no one really understands what they're going through. But if there's something I can do, I should do it, instead of just being like, oh, she shouldn't be treating her kids, oh, she went crazy, or what so on. And I think this is really what shaped me. I understood postpartum depression at the age of 30. So you have to imagine all these 30 years where you are really questioning what was wrong with our mom, what did we do wrong, where did we do wrong as kids, why wasn't she able to love us? And then you realize that she actually loved us. She just needed a pill, and no one just wanted to give her that pill because of their invalid norms and invalid lines and imaginary lines, I would say. And so, as a daughter of a depressed mom, I think this is what really shaped everything in my life. I never really felt that I'm rebellious. Now some people tell me that I'm rebellious, but I never really struggled. I did things without thinking of this imaginary barrier. So in a way, I didn't feel the struggle itself, and for other people, they see it as a rebellion. I don't, because I just don't recognize these dictatorships in a way. So that's it. So this is how I went into. I decided early. I used to read a lot, so I always thank the French Cultural Center in Tripoli, in the north of Lebanon, because we were at a generation post-war also. So, like, everything was being under construction. Nothing was as easy as today or accessible. So this heaven was really sacred for me and helped me a lot, because I found so many answers in books. And it taught me that I really need to study and that the key to anything in my life, to success, is education, job, financial security. And I understood, I think this whole experience made me understand that financial security is very important for women to have their own decision, to be free to do what they want, or what is true to themselves and what they deserve also, because we have this mentality that we don't deserve, in a way, to be free, to be true, to be independent. So this is how it started. And I had lots of period of when I was lost, of course, in my life. I did math the first year at university, and then I failed for it was actually the first time I get sexually harassed during the exam by a controller. Since I was a very how would I say, I was a very wise teenager. Like, I knew that this will end, and that there's no point to lose my future for teenagers. So I was like just studying, no going out, no friends, just focused on, I need to get out through education. So I need to make it to university best equipped as possible. So I was never really in a situation where I confronted this type of harassment, and it affected me a lot.
Were you aware? I have lots of friends, at our age, 30s and 40s, who told me that the Me Too movement is what opened their eyes to the reality that they've been sexually harassed in their lives without even recognizing that it was sexual harassment. Did you actually know that was sexual harassment?
No, there were levels. I would guess Me Too opened my eyes to smaller details, smaller sexual harassment. But the one I suffered during the exam was like very direct and open. And so the guy was really obscene with what he was, the controller, the supervisor, and he actually was very open about what he wanted me to do in class. So that was very clear. But yes, I guess the Me Too opened my eyes to many little things that I never really paid attention to, or thought that maybe it's normal. And I think what I would love to tell teenagers today is that don't be intimidated. Don't let the predator get you to think that, no, maybe you're getting him wrong. Yeah. When you feel there's something you feel about harassment, there are some people who tell you, oh, you look very beautiful today, and there's another person who will tell you look very beautiful, and you will feel threatened, or you will feel uncomfortable. And this is harassment for me. This is the small line, because there are people who have this imposing posture, or you feel the difference. So just stick to your feeling and don't be like, oh, maybe I'm getting him wrong, or the usual technique of harassers, or of why did you go this way, or why did you feel this way? No, I felt it, then it's wrong. I have the right to say it's wrong. So I failed my math because of the harasser. I failed my year. And then I went to complain when it was a very minor difference to pass to second year. So I went to the dean to complain, and then he told me, I actually, he was my teacher of algebra as well. So he told me, the first time you stood up in class to ask me a question, I was like, what is this girl doing here? She should be in journalism faculty. And I was like, when you're in scientific field, they don't even tell you that such fields exist. So he told me, go apply. It's you have to have an entry exam. If you don't pass, come back and I'll see what I can do to pass you to second year. But I really see you there. And this is how it started. I went to the test, I passed, and I felt like, oh, this looks more like me. You have to understand a little bit of everything. Politics, economy, society, math, everything. So I felt like this is something that looks more like me. And this is how it started. And now I would say I'm happy about it because I really don't like to be bored. That's my main problem in life. I think when you read a lot when you're young, you cannot just stick to a very limited task. You need to have your mind working the whole time. So that's what I like about journalism.
That's amazing. What did journalism provide you with as a woman? The first 10 minutes of this conversation, you've touched on very important issues, right? The stigmas, just geared towards women to make them feel that they're less of humans in our societies, whether it's because of mental issues, physical issues. We also speak about disabilities and other social issues. There is a stigma that is attached to divorce. So the children of a single mother suffer that stigma too. Stigma attached to a woman who is beaten by her husband. So domestic violence turns against a woman herself, the woman themselves, because there must be something wrong with them.
You must have done the copy wrong.
Exactly. So, and unfortunately, this is the story of so many women in the Arab world. You know what? This is what made us strong women, basically. This is made us aware that there are rights that we are deprived of as women.
Yes.
Let's take the path that we've taken. You took the journalism path. What did it provide you with?
Well, first, shame towards myself, because I remember when I was 16, I stood up at school and I told my teacher that I actually don't want women's rights because I don't want to be equal. I still want the man to take the garbage out. And and I was very opinionated and very sure about it. And it was something that my father used to tell us, like, who needs equality. And I remember she laughed and she told me, you're 16 now, but you will work and you will be a mom and you will have a family and then you will change your mind. So I'm not going to be offended by what you're saying now. And so I always now, when I hear women struggle, I always remember that arrogant teenager I was, and I feel ashamed of how I didn't see all this, even though I was reading so many books. Now I read them even differently. Journalism opened my eyes that women in the Arab world are not weak women, like some westernized point of view would see them. They are women who are struggling a lot, who are real fighters, and they are real survivors. And throughout the years, they brought so many changes without being too confrontational, and they're very smart about it. But it's a struggle. And I think that what journalism brought to me is that I saw to which extent it's not a battle between women and men. It's a battle between people who are interested in human rights and people who just want the patriarchal system where you don't have rights, you don't have an opinion, and you just follow. So it's between people who want to lead and people who want to follow, I would say. That's what journalism brought to me.
It's a power struggle after all. Patriarchy is not just against women's rights, but against men's rights. So tell me more about your experience that and Al Jazeera that has led you to your recent program, which I'm very interested in talking about as well.
My program now is called bekasretta. In English, we translate it to Women Voices, but the name in Arabic is very important for me to explain. Bekasretta is a detonation that shows that a U is going directly to a female. Because I realized that most of the shows about women, they talk about her as a she, but not as a you. We don't listen actually to her voice. And because it has also another meaning, it means breaking this T. Because in my idea, in the way I see women, we just put them in a closed circle like the ta al-marbuta in Arabic. We just put her in this circle. You have to be beautiful and smiley and well dressed and makeup on and just smiling the whole time. And these are the topics that are about women: fashion, how to raise a child, how to decorate your house, and what to cook today. And so for me, it's not that I love cooking and I love getting dressed well and I love raising my child. It does not deny this fact. It's just that, no, this is not what a woman is all about. A woman is actually living everything a man is living. She's living politics, she's living economic situation. You know, in the most dire economic situations, it's usually women who take the responsibility of finding alternatives to feed their family. So in war, she's the one who's living all the consequences of the war. She's losing her provider. She has to provide for herself, for her family. She has to move from one country to another sometimes. So she has so many responsibilities, and just putting her in that close circle and just telling her this is all you need to think about is not even true to what she feels, to what she lives. She lives a very hard situation most of the time. Even women who are coming from a more wealthy environment, they have their own struggles, they have their own battles. And I think that we, even in the West, we have this kind of idea, because I lived in France for a year, so I still remember how they were looking at women in the Arab world. They were looking at us as women who are weak, who are just submissive to the patriarchal system, whereas we're really strong. An Arab is very strong inside her house most of the time. She's the one leading the house, unless if she's really with an abuser or. What I see around me is that most women are the ones who are leading the family in one way or another. Maybe not very confrontational, but they are. So that's why I wanted to break the stereotype image about women. And I wanted to show them so many things they live. It's in a way to empower women, but I think we have this new trend of empowering women a little bit artificial and shallow in most TVs and in media, mainstream media. And I want to go more deep. Empowering women means you need to empower her politically, socially, economically, even health-wise, psychologically. There are so many aspects, and of course, education, of course. So that's why I chose to listen to the stories of these women, not have a specialist tell us. I think this is what's new about it, is that you hear it from the I wouldn't say victims, because most of the women I host, even if they were victims at some point, they are strong women who managed to get out of their situation and move to somewhere better. So the personal story of the survivors, I would say.
And what's special about your program? The program is special on so many different levels, to say the truth. There is, of course, the programming that, as you said, speaks to the women as consumers. They talk about fashion, as you said, makeup, other things that concern women, definitely, but there's more to women than that. And there are the serious, let's say, programs that have been addressing women's political empowerment, social empowerment, economic empowerment. But those programs didn't, I would say, many of them didn't survive on the long run. So they started injecting what appeals to women as consumers as well within those programs. So you see, I'm not saying it's wrong and I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that maybe because they've looked at their audience and they saw that, serious programs do not appeal to women. Is that correct? Do you think that's correct? How do you think your program was received as one of those very serious programs?
I would say this is where we played on cinematic and the way we presented. We played really visually on emphasizing more the personal story, and we that's why we include cinema and dramatic scenes. So it's more like a docudrama. So far, the women who watch the show, they like it, and they managed to finish the episode. I think this is coming because I use the personal story. Like I bring normal women, let's say, between brackets, normal, compared to specialized or activists, and I tackle things more on the personal level. Even when they're activists, I go on how did that make you feel, what pushed you on the personal level, psychologically, to go all the way through this. Of course, you run out a little bit sometimes of topics, maybe, but I think it's also going in depth is really. It takes a lot of time. I have to admit, I'm not blaming other shows, because I can see how it's sometimes me and the producer, we just say, if we were just doing this type of show, like in, out, it's live, it's way easier than what we do. One episode from us takes really at least 3 weeks to finish, in post-production, and the preparation and everything. We invest a lot in it, so it's not really easy for people on TV who want to go live every week. It takes really a lot of effort and a lot of passion. You need to find a good team who is as passionate as you about it to actually dig for the cases. If I wasn't with this feminist producer who is, I'm lucky to have a man who is feminist. That's rare. Even with some women, I wouldn't have had the luck I had with him. So it's really a lot of work, a lot of team effort to be able to give that depth and to be able to dig and find the right cases. To talk about it in a not very boring way, because TV is not something an academic. It's not. You have to talk to everyone. There's the academic, and there's also my grandma who didn't finish school beyond the third grade. So you have everyone, and I always keep that in my mind, that my grandma needs to understand as much as an intellectual. An intellectual will not get bored by listening to normal people when you're bringing genuine stories, whereas someone who's not educated will get bored if he's just listening to, for example, I would say, like if we use the terms intersectional and gender issue, gender equality, these are terms they don't even understand. So I'm simplifying things to them, but at the same time, I'm not losing the depth. It takes a lot of work, to be honest. I read a lot of academic research. I read a lot of articles. I see what other people did. I try to ask people when I want to present a topic, how do they see it? So I can simplify it, because also when you read a lot, you get stuck in a different level of knowledge. So you need to always remind yourself how to talk to people who didn't read as much as you. So yeah, I guess this is what makes me survive so far and not go for the commercial type. And this is what lacks in other shows. With all due respect, it's just that it's really a lot of work, and I understand when they have the urgency of the broadcast time that they need to give up on some things, and sometimes it's just that they don't have the passion, they're just filling the airtime. So
exactly, it's lovely. So you touched on your audience, and it's lovely that you're saying that your program is basically not one of those elitist programs. So it's not geared towards the intellectuals, the intelligentsia, and the Arab world. On the contrary, you're trying to not water it down, but break it down for them in terms and language that would be understandable for the bigger audience. It is in Arabic, which is also very important. So, as you said, it would reach your grandmother, but also, students and women everywhere. And you touched on something that I love as well, is the he for she. So yes, there are many men in the Arab world who support women and who are feminists, hardcore feminists, actually, more than some of
More
them.
than women.
More than women, definitely. And they're taking their cause and our cause as their cause, and they're running with it. And for them, really, I send them my love and regards, because we do need them. You spoke about how it takes lots of strength, and I bet it takes mental and physical, psychological strength, because I see that you're mostly neutral, as if you're trying to be strong and show your strength in front of not victims but real stories, the realities of women within those societies, and some of those realities are harsh realities. How do you deal with that?
I have to admit that we now Al Jazeera did for us like they gave us a free therapy for everyone who's on the team.
Wallahi, good for you. I think we all need therapy.
Because I had one day, even the editor who's just cutting the images, he came out crying, and he said, "I just can't take it anymore. These are real stories and real pain. It's not." There are some very strong stories. I'm someone who is, because of my experience with my mom, I would say I'm someone who's psychologically very aware of how things impact me, and I think that throughout my years in the news, it taught me that you do have PTSD even if you're not on the ground. And I've been on the ground as well, but you also, when you are listening to all these stories, you accumulate a lot of anger, a lot of deception, a lot of pain as well. You sympathize, and now I just take it as my strong point, that I sympathize to the point of seeing things that other journalists might not see. I just do lots of sports after, and I try to eat, to take omega, magnesium. Like I really manage my serotonin level in the most healthier way in order to be able to remain chemically strong. And if I cry a lot. Sometimes it's just the story is so dramatic that I cry with the guest, but I just cut it in the editing. So I allow myself to cry, and I allow myself to sympathize. And yes, this whole experience, these so many personal stories, you just see more and more how unjust the whole society is towards. I will not just say the women, towards anyone who is weaker. They consider weaker in the standards of society. Because for me, they're not weak people. Like I remember the mother of a child who has a very rare syndrome, part of the autism syndromes, but even more severe. And she now immigrated to Turkey, and she said that the thing that struck her the most is how people were nice to her child in the restaurant. They were like coming, because in their mentality, in their culture, anyone who's mentally retarded is someone who brings a lot of good. So they come and like they take barakat from him. Yeah, blessings from them. Whereas in the Arab world, whenever she was in the restaurant with him, people were like looking at her like, just get this child to shut up, or they were not even sympathizing. And that we just need to be nicer. In a way, we are a bit bullies, and we easily get carried away behind bullies in the society, and we want to impose standards that are not really as human as we want to be.
I want to talk about your recent trip to Beirut. So with the awful catastrophic event in Beirut that took place on August 4th, I believe. with the explosion that rocked the port of Beirut. You actually visited right after that, and you spoke to different women. Were you able to capture the miseries that have been inflicted on them, and still capture the diversity? Lebanese women are so different in terms of religion, sectors, class, race as well. Were you able to capture that?
Yes and no at the same time. No, in the sense of everyone was equal in front of the misery. It was really amazing to see, not amazing, amazing is the wrong word, but really striking to see how people who were living in downtown, which is a very expensive area, had their houses destroyed the same way as someone who's living in an old rented house in Jamaica. Old rent, meaning that these people, if they leave their house, the landlord will take it back and rent it special law for people who rented like before the 2000. They still pay cheap. So many of these women, we saw a woman who was staying in her house, whereas she doesn't have a toilet anymore. There's a tree now inside her toilet. She has to go downstairs to a neighbor to go to the toilet every day because her rent is $300 per year. If she leaves the house, the landlord is going to come and take back the house. And like we offered her 1 year of rent somewhere around Beirut, and she was like, okay. And then after that 1 year, I'm in retirement. I'm not going to be able to find a job, and I'm not going to be like putting all my hopes on just being helped the whole time until I die. So my best choice is just to stay where I am and hold on to this distracted house. And you have so many people like that. And you have people like Nadia Murad building, also really devastated. And so everyone was equal in a sense, but at the same time, everyone was had his unique story. There's the lady who has to hold on to a destroyed house because she will not afford to rent elsewhere. There's the lady who lost everything and she has to start back from zero, and they were already in a poor area. You have the rich people who also are not going to easily afford reconstruction because of the catastrophe of the dollar. You have the women who lost their children, the women who lost their mothers. They're equal in misery and at the same time so different. And you have people who just want to be strong because we're raised in Lebanon, so where we know trauma so well that we know that we have to move on, we have to clean up, we just get into this automated mode of okay, what's next, how do we go back to normal? But I think people are more and more aware of, I think this was really major for so many of them. Like they know they have to move on, but at the same time, they see that they're fed up with accumulating all these traumas throughout the years. And they're really tired. People are really tired. And this one was different because it came from within the country. It's not people who were fighting each other. It's not Israel who bombed them. It's not a terrorist attack. It just took all the security that was also a fragile security, but it took it away from them. Like before, you used to know that if there is a bombing, you just run in the other direction. You don't go back there because there might be another bomb. Now they feel like they don't know where to run to. It was living next to them, next door. And yeah.
You're a brave woman. You're a very strong and brave woman. And you went back to your home country to cover the miseries of others that you'll definitely empathize with and identify with. And this takes me back to the personal and the political, your personal challenges as a woman, growing up within that, situation that you grew up in, with being a very young a teenager without a mother who would help you understand the physical changes that happen to you as a girl. I'm assuming, please correct me if I'm...
No, right.
Also, how to protect yourself as a girl. I guess this is where our role as women kicks in. We're not going to be submissive to what others went through. On the contrary, we're talking about it out loud, which is very brave, extremely brave of you. It's not easy to talk about it, but the moment you talk about it, you let it go, right? You deal with it and you let it go.
Exactly.
And by doing that, you benefit millions and millions of girls around, Arabs, Muslims, non-Muslims, non-Arabs, from the Middle East, from the whole world, to see that we share that experience. This happens to all of us. All of us. We all can identify with what you said. And this is really brave of you. But also, I love the fact that you have, the program was your idea. You fought for it. And it's on air right now, and I hope it continues to do what it is doing. You're giving a platform for women, real women, as you said, to platform for their voices, to know what they're going through. It's very different. People sometimes ask me about certain population of women, whether here in my own country, and I tell them I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know. I can't speak on the behalf of, a black woman, for example. I can't speak on the behalf of a poor woman. I cannot. Okay, but what I can do is find a way for them to speak on their own behalf. And this is exactly what you did. And this is admirable, really, Rawa. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to tell people who are listening to this podcast, men and women?
Well, I have an issue I would like to address, because I'm getting criticized a lot on the show that it's too dark or negative. And there's this new trend in the world about being positive and being negative. And I just remember we did a song for Women's Day, and we asked the singer to actually write the words. And the words were very much inspired by The Secret. You can take your own destiny in hand, and you can achieve things, and you can do things by yourself if you just think hard about it, and you can fulfill them. And I told the singer that yes, her and a society that provides for her, that supports her, yes, she can do that. But I cannot go and tell this. That's not positive. That's insulting. If I want to tell it to a woman who was forced to leave her house and got raped 4 times in the refugee camp, and then she has to get up and find a job to feed her children and just move on just 2 minutes after she got raped, I cannot tell her that you must have thought about it and got this way. This is not being positive. This is being insulting. So we have to be really aware that being positive is actually say, I got raped. I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to move on, and this is how I will move on, and I will deal with it. And then I can be even more positive if I have the power. And if I don't have the power and I don't have the strength, I'm not forced to do this. It's more than enough to stand up for myself. But if I have the strength, I will do my best that this will not happen again to other women. This, for me, is being positive. And telling the women's struggle is not being negative. It's not a negative thing. This is actually very positive, because we had so many things happening again and again and again, like Me Too, because people didn't talk about it. And I think that our generation is struggling with its own self, with people who just want, we're so tired of listening to the misery of others. But if we don't do that, if everyone just saw half of the glass full, then we'll end up running out of water one day. So being positive is also seeing half of the glass empty and say, what do we need to do to avoid running out of water? So I think that we're new in the idea of positive and negative, that we don't know how to really approach it. And I think that I used to think of myself as someone depressive or depressed, and then I read the study that actually people who are more useful to the society are not the optimistic ones who see half of the glass full. It's people who see half empty and know that we need to do things to stop that. So I now consider myself as someone who's very positive and a happy person, even if I sympathize or I feel the pain, or if I'm sad sometimes because I see what other people feel. That's not bad to feel what others do. It's a duty for every woman who's living a better life to feel what other women are living. So, and I think that this is what needs to be positive.
Thank you so much, Rawaa, for being on Women of the Middle East, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you very much for hosting.
This episode with the song that Rawaa has mentioned, that was produced for her program in celebration of International Women's Day, and I give credit to Al Jazeera Network, especially Al Jazeera Arabic. Until next episode, stay safe and stay well.
أن أعطي لحياتي معنى، أن أعطي وفي قلبي غضب مع أمل في قلبي. لو يأتي يوم للحب، متى يأتي يوم لا دمع لا ألم، لو يأتي. قالوا لي عيدك في يوم، قالوا لي صوتك مسموع، قالوا لي، لكن أخذوا صوتي مني وأهانوه، ونسوا أني رغم الذلة إنسان. قالوها بالعنف صراخ يؤلمني، صراخ يؤلمني. وبرغم الأحزان سأمضي في دربي، وأحقق أحلاما سكنت في قلبي. فأنا إصرار وصمود وعزيمة، لن أستسلم أبدا يوما لهزيمة. هانذا يا عالم انظر، هانذا همة قلبي أقوى من أي أذى. أحلامي باتت تتحقق، خذ بيدي. أحلامي باتت تتحقق، خذ بيدي.